So this is how to make a Twitter bot, and it's going to be part 3. And actually the first thing I'm going to do is comment out, because in the previous video I just believe that these things here are not necessary for the code to run. So I'm just going to comment these 2 lines of code out, and in the running of it I'll make sure that everything works effectively, as in like it's not going to crash it. In fact, you know, I can do that. That's not going to affect anything. So it hasn't affected the authentication. So, and I'm actually wondering if it's used anywhere even down below. There's no reference to cr.tweets, so I can eliminate them. Let me just eliminate them altogether. That saved us 2 lines of code. And the next bit is this part here. We don't necessarily want it to run all the time, so I'm going to attempt to put everything into functions to start with, and then if we create a class, I'll put them into, we'll move the functions into the class and turn them into methods. It's probably not the best way of doing it. You should probably have a plan of doing that up front, but let's just do def public tweets. What we're doing here is just basically, as we saw in the previous video, is just getting all of the tweets from my personal timeline, and that's got nothing to do with this particular project. So I'm going to keep it because I like the code, but I'm going to move, that's why I'm going to wrap it into a function, because if you wrap it into a function, it's then the user's choice as to whether they want to use the code or not. Now, this piece of code up the top, I might put it in a function, I might not, but we definitely kind of like need to run this piece of code because you have to authenticate. If you haven't authenticated, then you can't do at least you can't do the Twitter connection parts of it. So I'm going to try and wrap all of the other lines of code that aren't already nested into functions. So like import date time, that's an import. That definitely belongs at the top. And yeah, this for loop and all of this stuff here, it's running in what we have learnt is the global scope. So I'm going to move it into a function if it's the right thing to do. So let's just go back here. Well, here we're just thinking of an appropriately named function. So public tweets, we'll just call it, I guess, get public tweets. Get public tweets. That's descriptive enough. And it takes no arguments. Oh, actually, it's going to have to take this is where we need classes, possibly, because here we've done an authentication. So if we're using it as a function, it's going to need to have API in it. So I've got to do the indentation. That's why this is all got this squiggly red line underneath it, because it's got the expected indent block pylons. So I tab that out. So that's okay. But we definitely need an API to come in here. Now, if this was all wrapped into a class, then the API would be available inside the class. So, and that's what I was talking about, like global scope and local scope, because now this is in the global scope here, and this one here is in the function scope, and it's getting into the function scope through the argument, almost like a little channel. It from here to there. In fact, I do a little. There we go. We're going from effectively. That's in the global scope. This one here is in the function scope. It's in the scope of it belongs in this function here. This is the function, so it belongs in the function. It doesn't exist outside of it, whereas this one exists outside of the function. And we're kind of like going from here. This one here is like this argument, effectively, or we call it a parameter. I can't remember which one it is, if it's a parameter on the way in and an argument once it's inside, or the other way around. But this argument here gets its data, so we're going to call get public tweets. In order to call get public tweets, we needed to have the API pre-made, so this has to be created before. and then it can feed inside. So that's how it gets in there. Otherwise, API dot home underscore timeline wouldn't exist. So, and in fact, API is of a certain type. So if I remove all of that and get rid of that, then I wonder if I can just print the type of API over here, because it might be just of type TweetPy. It might be just because I want to do a type hinting, which is I think it's just of this type. TweetPy. It might be of type TweetPy.api. Yeah, there we go. So, and that's just a type hint as to what it is. So we had to create this object. And in fact, I think possibly I can actually just copy that, and in here I can do type just in the side of that and run it, although it's got an squiggly underscore, so it's not understanding it. API is not defined. There we go. This is what its type is, tweetpy.api.api. Okay, an interesting one. I wonder if that still works. No. So this is what the typing works in, and the reason I say this is because this home underscore timeline turned yellow from white. So it's like recognized, as in if I did the API here to expose its methods and then dot, we get the methods, and I presume that home is the one that we're looking for. Home timeline exists, so that's how I can sort of like tell what it is. But also, like I thought I could tell what it is from here. Although it's interesting that it's of class tweetpy.api.api, almost as if this one's missing. So anyway, I've got to go along with what it is. So, but again, I guess now this is fine, because when we've run this, we have now got what API is. So if I type in just API on its own, it says that it says what this is, like the tweetpy.api.api. Effectively, this is the class at this position, and that's its memory location. That's where it exists in the memory. Now, if I do run this get tweets, also I actually have to run it. And this is the thing, I've created the function, and this is the nice thing about functions, like really, really useful, right? Because it's read the function, so it's got a little green tick here. That's perfectly fine, but we haven't actually called the function. So in order to run the function now, we have to do get public tweets, but we have to put in its API, which is just, we know what it is, it's just the API. So the API, and that should be fine. And when we run it, we get all of the same stuff. So that's fine. That's turning it into a function, which I could have done straight off the bat, but I thought it was worth explaining out. So I don't like the fact that this is tweet.text and that this isn't actually recognized. I'm guessing that's because, I don't know, because this is public tweets. One thing that we want to do, this function, by the way, returns back nothing. So it's got a API, let's hover over the right thing. There we go. Oops. Get public tweets. It keeps on disappearing. Get public tweets, API, and then it's got the arrow pointing to none. And that's because there's no return of this. We're just literally, it was just a tester to print things out. So we're literally just testing. So that's fine. That's cool. We've tested and that works. And I'm wondering what the next step is. So what should I do next? Tweets that are in the timeline. That's just a side note. I could really move this. When everything's converted into functions, I should really move this. Oh yeah, I was going to comment it. That's one thing. We don't massively need a comment, so maybe just a one-liner actually. Although we've got this argument that comes in here, we could just say what this is. So short method or function. When I change it to a method, I'll have to change. If I change it to a method, I'll have to change this to method. Short. I could call it routine. Short function. Short function to get. This is just a doc string that describes what it is to get public tweets for a user, and the input argument is API, which is the authenticated. I'm not even going to call it API. Is the result of the authentication, because you do tweepy.api on the authentication. So I wonder actually what that's called, and I can scroll over here. It doesn't actually have what it's called here. Hold on. Can initialize an API with the that's the bearer one. I'll scroll over to the one that I actually had, which is probably, these are all version 2s actually. I presume that one's here. That's the client. That was the client one here. Was it on here in the getting started? There was your OAuth one here. I wonder if this is 4.13. Why am I in a different thing then? Because that's I'm just lower down. Okay, fine. So I'll get rid of one of them because it's too open. So over here, it's interesting because in the docs, this is the thing about docs, by the way, they never tell you fully what they are, or at least I don't know where to nav to get it. Like, what is this actual? It's of class type tweepy.api. It must be. That's what it is. It's got to be that. And this is the authentication of it. So, and actually, yeah, because authentication is of class tweepy. Yeah, so you know, in theory, we have here args. We've got one argument, which is the API, which is the result, or it's of type tweepy.api and is the authenticated API. Right, because that's what we've got to work with effectively. This is the authenticated API, and it's kind of like nice if you've got a doc string, because sort of like, there we go, and it doesn't return anything. Returns return, like, does not return anything. There we go. We could return this if we wanted to, so we could create a list, and then so we could sort of like make a list here, like our tweet list, like a over here, and then return this tweet list. So we could do that if we wanted to. One thing actually, I presume public tweets, if I just stick this in it, we could probably see it in the Jupyter variables as well, I think. There we go, public tweets. We can actually see what public tweets is to an extent. And actually, I forgot about all of this. We can see what API is. So API is of type API. It's funny how it's like 3 different things. It's of type API, and the public tweets here, it's of size 20. So it's a list. But this looks like, I just wonder if this list is, I will actually just copy this in and sort of like see if I can run it. Copy that and paste it here and hit return. There we go. Is it just 20 of these, I presume? Yeah, it's 20. It's a list of, there we go. It's a bit clearer now, just for an understanding. If I can, I probably have to shrink the screen size actually now. Control minus, because it goes over the end of the page. Oh, there we go. There's a little thing here. Yeah, it's massive. Okay, but this is the actual tweets. But you can see the commas at the end of them, which is just a list of, let's get to the end of one. There we go. So like, it's good. Everyone ends in a lang.end. So it's a list of tuples is what it is. a list of statuses, status open brackets, and then a whole bunch of things in there. I could pull one of these out and have a look, but we don't really care. But it's just because we're here anyway. There we go. We can actually pull a first element out and expose it. That's what we'll do, just for a little reminder. But that's a tuple, basically. And because what we can do is I can do the same public tweets, and we can just get the first item out of it, the first index. That should work. And that's the first index now. And that first index, if I do make it Control Plus now, I'll zoom back in a bit so that you can read the writing. Over here, this first, it's I guess it's a status. I don't know what that is exactly, because it's not. I was going to say it's a tuple. It's a massive thing. I wonder if from that, I'll do a couple of things, right? Which is this, and then we'll do the type over here.
If you want
and
to,
and then we just run that. Yeah, okay, so it's of type tweepy.model.status is what it actually is. And if I do the public tweets, then, because I don't know if I can get into that, but because it looks like it's a list of things in itself, so it might be. Let's see if we can get the 0th element of that and see if that's, no, okay. I won't delve into it anymore, only because it's not necessary to. Can I, no, I can't edit that. I might be able to, no, I can't, I can just read it. So that's what that is. The plan, the next plan is, in that case, is this will be moved somewhere down the bottom. This was like a test. So this line of code can go to the bottom. I'm keeping it in its block at the moment, so that if I ever came back to it and wanted to run it, I could run it in one big block of code. Def log tweet, assuming that assuming that you want to log some logging code. Okay, this was for logging. Do I want to log? I will have a log file somewhere, which is in my drive, and so forth. So, and it's in the, well, it's in the same folder as this folder basically, which is I've done an explicit path just because I'm using Google Drive actually, but I could actually do an os.path to do it properly, but sometimes it's just easier to have it on the like your full user path for if you're going between operating systems. So if I was going to put it into, actually, you know, that's probably a silly argument, but you know, I was going to say if I was going to put it into Linux, because I do use that, then the path would certainly be different, but it might make more sense to have it in the same folder. But anyway, this is for logging. I could run this. It will probably just say logging setup. And in order to run it, I'd actually have to. So again, that's the thing. This is already wrapped up, so I don't have to worry about that one. So that's quite cool. I don't have to worry about that in terms of it probably works. Although I wonder, no, it doesn't need any arguments to go. But in fact, it works because I've pre-built this. It's got no argument in there already. It's going to work as it is. So that's for logging. And then I've got another one here for make a tweet. So this is the one that we're going to test. So I might stop the video here and start the next one with the only thing that I'll do before stopping this video. No, I'll even keep the import date time here. So this is where we actually make a tweet. I'm going to test making a tweet, and I might start getting rid of the stuff down below because it's probably not that useful. That's my username over there. So, and again, when we're running code, there's things that we can show and things that we can't show. Oh, sorry, that's not my username. That's just my. I wonder what this lookup status is. API SE. Let's get that one. Name user. That doesn't work. That doesn't do anything. So look up statuses. I was trying to look something up and I don't know what I was trying to look up. What does this do? But it throws an error anyway. So I'm going to be working on that one. This here is all going to run. So it's going to get the user screen name, count ID, follower, friends. It's going to print out my friends list. So I think that's what. Okay, this bit won't. Get the user object for Twitter. Yeah, I think this is not going to be so relevant because I don't care about this stuff. Returns information about the specified user. That's what that was for. And I was looking for information on my own username, but I could, if I looked up someone else's username. So if I actually looked up, what was that username of the, so if I pulled it in here, well, I get his username out, but the actual person that inquired about the tweet in the first place, which just means pull out his user handle. So let me see if I can get, oh, there's his handle over here. If I can copy it, yeah, I can. So rather than using my username, I have got his username, which is this one here with an @ sign. I wonder if this one runs or not, but let's have a look. Yeah, there we go. It runs for me. That's my user ID and my account. And if I take this user, who was the 4060 guy, the new 4060 over here, I can run that and we can see his user ID and his handle, and he's actually changing himself from, it looks like he's changing himself from, I don't know why that just jumped, the screen just jumped there when I went on it, but he's changing he's called himself initially the 40 30 20 10. So he's obviously doing something else, and now he's called himself the new 6040 or something. Maybe, you know, that's owned 60% Bitcoin or 60% index and 40% Bitcoin. So that's what this particular user is doing. So that's quite nice because this little block of code runs again, but it's going to need to be wrapped in the same way. So when I'm here at dlefco, that was me by way of example. So you can kind of like put in your own usernames. And that's the nice thing about these little blocks of code. But in order to make the API nice, and I've got this all stored somewhere else effectively because I copied it from the original Twitterbot one that I had previously. So that was the original Twitterbot one here. So I've literally copied and pasted everything into here, and I'm going to modify this. So yeah, it looks like most of the code runs. Why have I done that? That was me probably. Get recent tweets, that's cool. I don't care about recent tweets. API lookup status, I don't care about that. So I'll probably be deleting some of these and keeping just and testing this make a tweet. So all the stuff below can probably go. I might mark that as probably going there. We don't need it. We don't even need get recent tweets. I don't even have to test for it, as in Control / all gone, all commented out. And that's kind of like the best way, at least to start with, of reducing the code down to what's needed. So yeah, I'm going to stop it here and I'll start the next video at the beginning of this, which is trying to make a tweet, and I'm going to remove the date time and move it up the top and all the rest of it. So I'll see you in the next one.